right, welcome. I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Francis Yu. Thank you, Dr. Francis, for joining me today. So Dr. Francis is kind of a man of many skills and talents. He really is like a Renaissance man. That's kind of how I see you, Dr. Francis, because you just have so much knowledge in various arenas. So Dr. Francis is a physician. He is board certified in family medicine and neuromusculoskeletal medicine and osteopathic manipulative medicine. And he also has additional qualifications in pain medicine and acupuncture and Myers-Briggs testing and the Enneagram as well. So today we are going to be talking about the Enneagram and how this is relevant to physicians and healthcare professionals and the general public as well, and how it's relevant to sleep and mental health. So thank you, Dr. Francis, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So I'd love to just jump in by hearing more about your experience with the Enneagram. How were you introduced to it, and what exactly is the Enneagram?
Let's go in that order. So for me, I was always, at least since my teenage years, a curious person. Philosophy and mathematics, which is what I studied in undergraduate and in college. And I was always interested in how people work, probably because I thought I was really bad at interacting with people. So I thought if I knew everything about people, I could interact with them better. Uh, Somewhat true, somewhat false. But anyway, so one of the first typology systems I was introduced to was the Myers-Briggs type indicator, based on Carl Jung's analytical psychology system. And then in my earlier mid 20s, I just kept searching. I found about the Enneagram, and at that time, I think I was in medical school or starting residency, and didn't really have the spare attention or space in my schedule to learn more. So, but later I was able to gravitate toward more and go to this institute in New York for I think about 200 hours total. I think it was like 4 or 5 combination of courses to get my a lot of education and learning in. Like I'm always the type I don't know enough, so I have to learn more, which is actually is a strength and a weakness because in the end I have to know that I always know enough to do what I need to do now, but then I still can learn things. So the short version of it is that number one, I thought I really couldn't relate to people, and maybe knowing how people work through systems would help me. And number two, just for my own, I guess, healing or development or growth, because I felt that there was this uh, something something was needed, but I don't know what it was. And that could be combined with all other struggles or approaches or my background and such. But that is definitely all plays into this. But that's a whole autobiography in a way. So yeah. So in the short, it's for me it was the knowledge and the perspective for healing. So then I'll talk about what the actual Enneagram actually is now. So for me, I would say it is a body of work, investigation, exploration into transformation and development. And these are grand words, but for me, I don't know what other words would work, but especially in regards to specifically for human identity, belonging, healing, wholeness, and development of the person, a relationship with themselves and relationship with other people. It's very broad, but yeah, for me, it's all those things. And the way I like to say it is, it's beyond wellness to wholeness, because the word healing and wholeness have shared the same root etymologically, and for him is about not recovering, but remembering and rediscovering or unwrapping our whole being that's already there, as opposed to striving to, oh, I need this to make me complete. It's so the Enneagram is all about um, remembering and realizing the completeness, which ironically also takes work because of just the way life goes. I would say it's also that's a big general explanation. In modern times, though, it is really widely known as a typological system, which is really scratching the surface. And the people who are dissatisfied with it are the ones that are looking for immediate answers or somehow want everything all at once and say, oh, but this is just another whatever. But I suppose, but that reflects more on the commenter than the content, I would say. Another thing about the Enneagram is that it is a very fluid system, meaning that modern people who work with it have collaborated its contents or thought about it in other perspectives, like object relations theory or Jungian analysis and shadow work, which is kind of I don't know if it's a buzzword now, but I hear a lot of people talking about that. I also think it works pretty well with internal family systems and developmental trauma perspectives, all those things. But this was the system or this perspective was developed before quote unquote modern psychology. So there's also this sense of mystery in the Enneagram, and there's definitely connections or relationships to wisdom traditions or spiritual traditions, but not in a overtly systematic, dogmatic, institutional way. It was sort of the inner work exploring things, but not in terms of a ritualistic or dogmatic way. So there's always a sense of mystery there, which is good, I think. And but it also pairs really well with all these other 20th century and 21st century ways of thinking about ego development and trauma and healing and all that. So I think I said a lot, but there we go.
No, thank you for sharing that. And, I can really appreciate, how you got into exploring these different sort of systems of understanding oneself. Like I was also very, very, very shy and very introverted and very like socially anxious growing up. Most of my life, I was like that actually. And so I can relate to that idea of wanting to understand, how do you relate to people? How do you relate to yourself? And kind of reading and exploring and almost getting lost in those ideas, but not really applying them. So yeah, I can see some parallels there with your experience and my own. And I think it's so beautiful how you said that part of the Enneagram is really remembering your whole self,
Mm-hmm.
because we're whole already. Oftentimes, and I'm a psychiatrist, so I see patients in my practice who are, kind of looking for external things to feel whole or looking for systems to help them feel whole. But, there's this ancient idea in Ayurveda, which is the traditional system of healing from India. And the whole premise of that is that we've forgotten who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so the system of healing, it's all about reconnecting with yourself and maybe peeling back those layers so you can reconnect with your whole self, which has never gone away. It's just always been there, but it's under all of these layers.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I love how you shared that and how you stated that. I know you've spoken about connecting with one's authentic self through the Enneagram, and how physicians and healthcare practitioners have maybe lost that connection with their authentic selves through their training and for other reasons. So I'd love to hear more about, how does one connect with their authentic self? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And how can the Enneagram provide a guide to get there?
Yeah, so physicians are really good at taking tests and passing other people's expectations. That's basically what we did for 12, 16, 20, 24, or whatever number of years. And you're essentially honing this particular part of you, the physician part of you, the healthcare professional part of you. Not at the expense, but it's just other parts of us aren't emphasized. Meaning there isn't a during medical school or residency saying, "Oh yeah, I think you should go on a go on a hermitage for 6 months and create stuff with your body or whatever," and discovering the other aspects of us. We're basically experiencing and honing and training a part of us So we get so attuned to the persona, right? The physician persona, healthcare provider, professional persona, that it almost overwhelmingly overtakes the self or the living. And the wholeness is sort of uh, forgotten in the sense that I just maybe see myself just as doctor, just all the time. I'm a doctor at home, a doctor on the airplane, I'm a doctor on my honeymoon or whatever. It's and it's and that basically is the opposite of the wholeness, because you're detaching from the wholeness by being so overwhelmingly focused on a part. And that's just how things are, education and training. It's good. I'm not saying that we shouldn't train people to do that, but there's no immediate benefit to society or hospitals to encourage physicians and others to focus on these other aspects. And that's something, unless you have a really good mentor or really close people who can really help you digest and work on those parts, it's just not honed or polished or developed or uncovered as much as our education training aspects. So in that sense, the actual system and how it works is makes it such that it's easier to forget the wholeness, because the particular parts of us are so emphasized. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think part of our training is it's all about standardization.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we all need to fit into like a certain standard. We need to achieve a certain degree of competence to pass our exams and get our certifications and so forth. And so that in and of itself kind of breeds a lack of authenticity. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of, shifts people away from connecting with their individuality. And I think that's why one of the reasons why physicians and other healthcare professionals, often say to me, especially in my practice, working with people doing therapy, uh, is they often say, like, I've forgotten who I am. I used to
Mhm.
love mountain biking, or I used to love playing chess, or I used to love knitting. And I don't do any of those things anymore. And I've kind of forgotten what I even like to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more details about the Enneagram, and especially for people who are maybe listening and aren't familiar with it. So if you could share more about the structure. So I know there's nine primary
Yeah. Yeah.
types,
Yeah.
and then there are subtypes or wings as
Yeah.
well. So how does
Yeah.
that all work?
So I would answer that by saying, when the Enneagram first appeared in the 20th century, at least in the books that we have, there was no actual mention of the nine types. The nine types came out of work about future contributors into different perspectives, but going then now to the types. And the emphasis is that all of us have awesome, essential, whole qualities. We're just complete. And there are nine different aspects to that wholeness. It's kind of like a nine-sided jewel. The jewel is whole by itself, it just happens to have nine facets to it. And there are nine ways to forget that wholeness. And then each type that a person identifies with or relates to then tries to regain that jewel, whatever it is, through their own means, not realizing that they just have to remember it's always there and not needing to strive to get it again. Now, this is where the examples and going to the types makes it a lot more clear. So, another thing is the Enneagram, technically, the term is the actual symbol. So, the symbol has a circle, a triangle, and something called a hexad figure. And where all the vertices are on the circle is what we call the nine types or 9 qualities or 9 aspects of the wholeness. So your type or anyone's type can be anywhere on the circle, meaning it doesn't have to be on a particular point. So let's say it's towards slightly away another point, then that's what we call the wing. I'll now go back to that once I talk about the different types. Actually, let's do that now. So there are 9 types or 9 qualities of awesomeness of the wholeness that we forget. So let's go through them. So type 1, the keywords I wrote down for myself are perfection, mistakes, and integrity. So this is the sense that there is a integrity and a perfection in the way everything happens. I'm not saying if there's something that destructive that happens, it's morally good or bad. That is a judgment one can make. But this is more of a sense in like creation is awesome and perfect. It's we mean all in how things are perfect. But specifically, people tend to, if we're especially type one, be a stickler for rules, or they really don't like mistakes. Perfectionists, in essence. So instead of realizing there is perfection and goodness in mistakes, meaning there are mistakes, but that's fine. Things are still good. I mean, there are mistakes. I'm not saying you can't ignore the mistakes, but there's a sense of innate, it's still good, versus those who are type 1 are prone to, this is their gift as well, realizing this perfection, but forgetting this perfection and thinking they have to correct all the mistakes. Oh, all these mistakes, all this rule breaking, that won't do. We can't have that. We have to make it good and perfect, get rid of the mistakes. As opposed to realizing, okay, there's a crack in the wall or whatever, but that is maybe even adds to the goodness of it. And I don't remember the term, but there's that Japanese the function of fixing I think pottery or bowls with gold, and it actually highlights the mistake.
Right.
But then that also highlights the wholeness and integrity of the whole piece. So for type 1, it's the integrity, but realizing there's perfection in spite of or because of the mistakes. And maybe I can get to the others a little bit more quickly. But type 2, the keywords I used are helping, being helped, needing, and being needed. So we all want to be loved, we all want to be needed and such. But when we forget that we are loved by loved ones or the world or whatever you want to call it, then the temptation is to recover that sense of being loved by doing things for other people. And the classic words are, I'll take care of that for you. It's no problem. Or I'll just take care of it. And really, that, so that, there are two ways to perceive that. They may truly, honestly do that because they already feel loved and needed. I mean, they know that they're needed. But if someone is more not, they forgot their wholeness, then it's I need to do this so that I can get their attention and feel loved. So there's a very fine difference. It's about how the basic motivation is showing up. So let's type 3 because this is essentially school and education is the success, is the never-ending CV, as I like to call it. It's instead of doing all these things to become successful and feel valuable and feel like when someone introduces us, there are 10,000 things that we've done that people can realize how awesome we are. It's remembering we're already awesome. That's why we do these things. So that's the super short version of that. And unfortunately, our education system is the opposite. Is you have to pass these things in order to be allowed to be worthy.
Right.
But really, it's we're worthy. That's why we can study and pass tests. So it's the flipping around of remembering the wholeness as opposed to trying to get to it on our own.
Yes.
Type 4, the words I wrote down are significance, woes, like WOES, and authenticity. It's instead of saying, woe is me, and I'm so special and unique, and no one gets me, in order to prove one's worth and significance as an individual, as being special, is remembering that we are all special and unique and creative already. And maybe that shows up as woes or art or whatever. It's flipping around the story to it comes out of an abundance and wholeness and essence, as opposed to, yeah, I'm going to I need to write this really weird poetry and wear clothes that everyone looks at me, and then I'm going to play songs that make me cry, and then go into the bath with rose petals and look at me, I'm doing this, and I put it on Instagram and look how special I am. Well, yeah, but if you realize you're special already, you may not even realize you need to do that, or you may do that anyway, but not necessarily rely on that for your realization of self-significance. So it's again a thin line, but it's the opposite.
Right.
All right. So type 5, the words I picked were enervation, hoarding knowledge and emotion.
Mhm.
So here, the forgotten realization is that we're all connected, and that there's abundance of caring, emotion, resource, knowledge, and capacity. But person who relates to type 5 tends to think, oh, I need to learn more, or I don't have enough emotional resources to go around, so I need to be by myself. I need to hoard up knowledge so I can show people I know a lot, and people just drain me. But if I know enough stuff, maybe they won't drain me. So there's this continual building up of specialized knowledge. So again, the key is realizing we're all connected. We have capacity. I think the Buddhist term is we know just enough to do what we need to do, as opposed to I don't know enough, and once I know enough, I'll be able to do things. Well, then that'll be forever. You'll never know enough to do everything because we
Right.
already know enough already. So type 6, the words I have are loyalty, belief, and preparation. It's the sense that, oh, I don't have people to trust. I can't trust the government. I can't trust my national organization. I can't trust my job. I can't trust whomever. And then they build up a group, a tribe, perhaps not necessarily a tribe, but it could be one-on-one. A sense of, oh, I know I built up this relationship. Now I can trust them. Although, until they do something tiny thing, oh, why did they do that? I don't know if I can trust them anymore. So there's a persistent attempt to build trust, loyalty, follow people or be followed, and prepare for all different situations. As opposed to realizing, yeah, I'm fine. I'm going to follow see things go, and I know that I'm trusted and people trust me in a very more non-dual sense.
Mm.
I know that may be a little abstract, but it's a lot about these. The type 6 is really related to, can I trust people? Can I be a part of this? Or, and then someone does something, small thing, and then they say, I'm not sure. Why did they do
Mm.
that? And we say that a lot. These are the people who challenge authority, but
Mhm.
also they're the ones to defend authority to the end. So there's
Mhm.
this pairing up or aligning with, which is what belief for me is, loyalty.
Right.
So
And I wonder if that
yeah.
is also rooted in, like, if the authentic part of that is trusting oneself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. And this, because if you trust once yourself, there is a sense that you can trust others. I know that's
Mhm.
a little bit simplistic, but yes, there is a sense of, oh, maybe I can't trust myself, hence I need to find someone else to trust
Hmm.
and build this foundation.
Right.
And realizing one is one's firm foundation. The foundation is always there. Yep, exactly. Type 7, the words I have are satisfaction and avoidance of pain. It's the realization that we're always dynamic and have something fun to do, and there's always possibilities and such and satisfaction. And that even in pain sometimes there's a sense of development or insight that can be gathered from there. But the type 7 can seek for satisfaction. They're a whirlwind of new ideas. Let's do this now. Oh, now I want to do this now. I want to do this now. To avoid the sense that of this pain or this stillness in which there is a rich satisfaction, but there's pain as well.
Mm.
So it's the opposites here. Type 8, the words I have are strength, weakness, and vulnerability. So the stereotypical, I don't normally like to use the stereotypes, but they're the in your face, maybe boisterous, or they have a way or something they want. They have an opinion, but they let people know. They can be the boss you follow because they're vulnerable, show their weakness, and real a leader, or they can be the boss that are just bossy and you don't want to follow them because they just want to show that how bossy they are. So that's my way of the type 8 is remembering that strength comes from our weakness
Mm.
and a vulnerability isn't a sign of failure, it's a sense of where the strength actually comes from. So
Mm.
it's again it's the flip side. And finally, type 9 is peace, harmony, and conflict. In short, the type 9's focus is on harmony, but they really don't know what to do with conflict. So they may sweep it under the rug or daydream and pretend doesn't exist. I always use that cartoon from Gun Show, the dogs in the burning building, and they say, "This is fine." I don't know if you know what I'm
Right.
talking
Yeah.
about. So that's the kind of a type 9 reaction is avoiding the conflict or not realizing what's going on.
Mm.
But the power is realizing there can be harmony in the presence of conflict doesn't erase harmony. But that's the struggle or the lesson or challenge for type 9 that there is peace, there is harmony. Just because there's conflict doesn't erase that. You don't need to go and erase the conflict or ignore the conflict. There is a peace that is underlying even the conflict.
Mm.
Whew, all right, that was a whirlwind through all 9 types. But I think the main point is that there's a striving to regain the thing that we just need to realize that we just need to remember and recover or remember that's always there. Yeah.
Right. Right. No, that was amazing. Thank you. Super helpful to hear all the different types kind of laid out. And I think maybe like the synthesis of all of that is that, each of these types has its own kind of strengths or
Yeah. Yeah.
predispositions, and that you might be expressing that in the same way, but the intention behind it might not be authentic. So like I think number 2 was the helper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the person who needs to be loved and helps out of this need to be loved, they're forgetting that they actually are love. And so they can help as an expression of that love rather than as feeling a dearth of that love.
Exactly. That's yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I don't know if we'll have time to go over the wings. Maybe we should do that.
Very simply, the
Okay.
wings is that your type is anywhere on the circle. So meaning it could be a type 7 closer slightly to 8 as opposed to being closer to 6. But all the types have qualities of the type they're at and the next door. It's just that for some people, they have more of one neighbor than the other. That's just
Hmm.
simply what the wings are. It's actually very, very simple.
So how does one go about figuring out what their Enneagram type is?
Yeah, so this is the kind of a quintessential question because this is how people get started on their own journey to learn about the Enneagram. And there are a lot of assessments and inventories and things like this, what people call tests, quote unquote, but they're not really tests because you can't pass or fail them. They're evaluations. Some are better than others, but I actually never took a formal evaluation. And for myself, it was a lot of just learning about all the types, the system, working with people, and getting. I had my Enneagram teacher, but you could have someone who simply knows you very well and willing to challenge you and not just comfort you to help you figure out what your type is. But that does require a lot of work and discussion and challenging oneself. So but I would say doing an evaluation, if you're going to do it, it's a launching pad, not a conclusion. If someone's going to use an evaluation assessment for the Enneagram as the done deal, then it's actually counterproductive. They're saying, "Oh yeah, I got this thing to figure me out. I don't need to do any more work." Then, all right, yeah, look, it says this is this thing, or I'm definitely not this thing. This is totally wrong. Well, that's just all reactions you can use to figure out what your type actually may be. I would say if someone is really going to do the assessment and evaluation, getting help from someone who's done more learning Enneagram, such as myself, or even someone who's willing to really put up with you and really explore it with you, as opposed to saying, "Oh yeah, that's definitely not you," or "Yeah, this is definitely," is more about leading them and maybe coaching them or exploring it with them. So there's an easy way and a hard way. The easy way is not a way. It's not hard in that it's hard because it's not easy, but it's rewarding in the sense that you're really getting true insight into yourself. Yeah, that's how I would answer that.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And and I think what you just said was really important with regard to it's a launching pad. It's not an endpoint to understand what your type is, because this is really just a system that can be a catalyst for personal exploration and growth. It's not a diagnosis,
Yep.
something that's fixed. Um, so I'm curious because I speak a lot about sleep and mental health.
hmm
How might understanding the Enneagram or your own type help you with sleep quality
Yeah.
potentially, or your mental health and personal growth?
I would say there are two ways I can approach this. The simpler one is that Enneagram as a whole is a lot about approaching or changing an inner state per se. It's not I succeeded in making this amount of money, whatever. There's an external result. It's more of a I want to have equanimity. So in any situation, I can not be overwhelmed by the situation or something like this. And Enneagram really is about that half of the well, not half, but that portion of it that's not addressed as much as the external successes as internal successes in a way. And it's the explanation that half of the time, if you look at yin yang, is half is recovering and half is productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And the short version of it is that there's no direct sleeping correlation with the types. Although you could make stereotypes and be like, the 3 has to be the most successful sleeper, or like the type 5 will study how to sleep into the night instead of sleeping, or things like this. But that's more fun and it may be helpful to know the types, but it's not necessarily something that requires. It's not complex looking into that. The other though, the if you look at mental health or unhealth and the development is that if you look at observe people with certain maybe personality disorders or psychological tendencies or delusions per se, they can, although it's not always easy, relate it to that person's Enneagram disposition. So, for example, let's go with type one, who's the can be the perfectionist, and there's this internal struggle with internalized anger. There's hypercriticism towards others because they're not following the rule, there's mistakes, but there's a hypercritical perspective on oneself, which can bring one to a conflict. Maybe there's a rule or a law that's it's not a just law. Maybe it encourages like a loss of a life or something of a friend and just make up a law, and then they have a conflict. Oh, but then we have to follow the law because that's good. Oh, but then this other part is this dismantle this. So they can be, I don't call it a breakdown because that's not really the best word, but there's a that can spiral down into this huge internal conflict. So that's one example. Another quick example would be type 5. There is a sense of wanting to know what's going on, being connected, but because they may feel like I need to study more, I need to learn more so I know what's going on, whether that's bugs or history or
Mhm.
whatever, medicine. But they may create a world within their own mind so much that it's this now delusional, fabricated world. But now they got the thing that they were most afraid of, being disconnected with others, not being in touch with reality. So there's a way to see how each type would become less healthy per se. But I wouldn't say it would be helpful to the other way around. Oh, let's look at this person with a particular diagnosis and match it with a
Mhm.
type. If you
Right.
know your type or someone's type, you can identify how particular symptoms or behaviors are showing up. Hopefully that
Right.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. No, that's incredibly helpful. And I think, it's really helpful, I think, for physicians to have this understanding of the Enneagram, even, partly just, for their own personal growth, but also to understand the people that you're working with maybe a little
Yeah.
bit better and how you can kind of leverage those relationships to understand your personal relationships. I actually got, a little mini course on the Enneagram through Donald Miller's story brand course, Business Made Simple.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and it was really fascinating because one of the little courses in that suite was on the Enneagram and how that relates to business and growing your business and kind of leveraging your own strengths and working with other people. So there is so much that a person can, experience with the Enneagram. It's such a deep and rich area of exploration, and we just kind of scratched the surface. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and I think we could keep on talking about it for hours. But for people who are interested in learning more about you and what you offer, where can people find you?
For the Enneagram, I would say the Enneagram for physicians.com. Everything is there, resources, guest blog post, once like this video. So all the Enneagram stuff will be available on that umbrella. So the Enneagram for physicians. And I would say based on the nature of the work and my personality or preferences, it's really I'm not for me, I don't want to give someone resources and be like, okay, this is all you need to know, which is true, but it's actually help catalyze insights and change for people. So I prefer to work in smaller groups at this time, like six, and also doing the one-on-one with people. But that does bring up a aspect of accountability and vulnerability within the people working with each other because we're really going on this journey all together. The enneagramforphysicians.com, and right now I'm really focusing on the, like a better term, more accountable, intimate, one-on-one and small group exploration, because this is such a vulnerable part of us as well, and there's can go so far and deep. Uh, yeah, so that answers the question. Yeah.
And I know you're on Instagram and Facebook. What are your social media handles?
Yeah, so that will be Dr. Francis Yu.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Francis. This was such an interesting conversation, and I learned a lot, and I really appreciate you being here and spending your time with me today.
Welcome. It was fun.
Thank you.